Cursed be he by day, cursed be he by night. No, it's not poetry, it's not scripture, it's a curse, one etched into the annals of history, directed at a young man whose only crime was thinking for himself. Baruch Spinoza, the man who dared to question what everyone else blindly accepted, was excommunicated from his religious community with those very words. Cursed by day, cursed by night, condemned by the people who once called him family. For what? For daring to ask, what if God isn't up there watching us? What if God is right here as us? That idea, so simple, so dangerous, would unravel the theological scaffolding that had propped up centuries of belief. It was a thought that didn't just bend the rules of philosophy, it shattered them. It didn't ask for permission, it didn't whisper, it roared, and it would cost Spinoza everything. But in losing everything, he gained something else, freedom. The freedom to see, to write, to speak what others only dared to feel in secret. This is the story of a man who gave up comfort for clarity, a man who polished lenses to survive, and in doing so, helped the world see the divine more clearly than ever before. In a world that says, believe and obey, Spinoza said, look and understand. This is not just a story about philosophy, this is a story about you, about the true nature of reality and the terrifying, beautiful possibility that you are not merely made by God, but made of God. So brace yourself, because once this idea enters your mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It doesn't ask you to believe. It asks you to wake up. Let's begin. Amsterdam, 1632. Baruch Spinoza was born into a Jewish family that had already tasted the bitter wine of persecution. His parents fled Portugal to escape the Inquisition, seeking safety in a city known for its tolerance. But tolerance has limits, especially when it comes to unfiltered truth. Spinoza was quiet, thoughtful, not the kind you'd expect to start a revolution. He studied Torah by day, helped with the family spice business by night, and lived under the protective structure of a tight-knit religious community. For a time he belonged, until he started asking questions. By the time he was 13, he was devouring the works of Plato, Aristotle, and Descartes. These weren't just books, they were kindling, and they ignited a fire inside him that tradition couldn't extinguish. He questioned everything, the immortality of the soul, the idea of a creator God, the authority of Scripture. The response was swift and brutal. At just 23, Spinoza was excommunicated, not gently, not quietly, publicly and violently. His name was cursed in a synagogue, his presence was outlawed, his voice was silenced, or so they thought, because that exile did not destroy him. It liberated him. Cut off from the world he knew, he chose obscurity over conformity. He abandoned wealth and comfort. He turned down prestigious university posts. He chose instead a humble life, grinding lenses for microscopes and telescopes, a man polishing glass while refining his mind. And with every lens he polished, he looked deeper into nature, into thought, into God. This was no longer just a rebellion against doctrine. It was the birth of a new kind of seeing, a vision where God wasn't a ruler in the sky, but the infinite substance flowing through all things. Spinoza wasn't just kicked out of a community, he was launched into the unknown, and he took us with him. To understand why Spinoza broke the mold, you first have to understand what that mold looked like. And in the 17th century, it had a name, René Descartes. The father of modern philosophy, Descartes, gave Europe exactly what it craved, certainty. He drew sharp lines, soul and body, mind and matter. He split reality into two clean categories, one that thinks and one that takes up space. Humans, he said, were the only creatures with both. The body belongs to science. The soul belongs to God. Everybody wins. No one gets angry. Religion and science shake hands and walk away smiling. It was a brilliant compromise, and it was wildly popular. But Spinoza wasn't interested in compromise. While Descartes was applauded for his dualism, Spinoza sat in the back of the room, silently preparing to tear it down. He saw the contradiction at its core. How can there be more than one substance if, by definition, a substance is something that needs nothing else to exist? If God is truly infinite, truly complete, then nothing outside of God could possibly be real in and of itself. To Spinoza, Descartes' God was still too human, too limited. A creator outside his creation, separate and watching. But Spinoza didn't see separation. He saw unity. He saw a divine presence not above reality, but as reality. So he said no, not to God, but to the idea that God is elsewhere. He dismantled the pedestal and placed the divine in everything. This was not just philosophy. It was heresy. It was madness. It was genius. Spinoza was not merely disagreeing with Descartes. He was rebuilding the universe from the ground up. And in his universe, God wasn't a person. God was a process, a force, an infinite unfolding whole. And you? You're not outside of that whole. You are it. Here's where the ground beneath your feet starts to shift. For Spinoza, the divine isn't up in the clouds, seated on a throne. The divine isn't watching from a distance. The divine is the distance. It is the clouds. It is the throne. And it is you. According to Spinoza, there is only one true substance in existence, and that substance is God. Everything else is not separate from it, but an expression of it. Trees, stars, rivers, animals, and people, all were not created by God. They are God. Seen through different forms, every leaf, every gust of wind, every heartbeat is an unfolding of that one infinite reality. This isn't a metaphor. This is metaphysics. To say that God is everything is not to romanticize nature. It's to radically redefine it. The flower in a field is not beautiful because God made it beautiful. It is beautiful because it is God expressing beauty. You are not spiritual because you think spiritual thoughts. You are spiritual because you exist, and existence itself is divine. In this vision, nothing is accidental, nothing is unworthy, nothing is profane, and that changes everything, because if everything is divine, then so is the pain, the chaos, the confusion, the rain that floods your street and the joy that lifts your heart. All of it, not sent by God, not permitted by God, but God in motion. This understanding is not easy. It shatters hierarchy. It destroys the pedestal of man. You're not special because you're human. You're not superior to animals, plants, or stars. You are simply another mode of the infinite, shimmering like all the rest. And in that shimmering, the ego dies. But something greater is born. Reverence. To live in Spinoza's world is to walk through a sacred reality where every face you see, every object you touch, every thought you think is God, reflected back at itself, including this moment, including you. What happens when the crown is removed from humanity's head, when we are no longer kings of creation, but siblings to stones, cousins to clouds? For Spinoza, this was not a loss, it was liberation. In a universe where all things are modes of the same divine substance, the very idea of hierarchy collapses. Humans are not above animals, nor are animals above plants, nor stars above dust. Each is simply an expression of the one infinite essence, God, manifesting in a different form. This idea is humbling, and for many it's offensive, because it dismantles the myth that we are chosen, central, superior. Spinoza didn't believe we are special because we can think. He believed everything thinks in its own way, a tree, a rock, a dog. They all express both body and mind, not in the same intensity, not in the same complexity, but in essence. All have form, all have an idea, all participate in the divine being. This is where the ego trembles, because if your worth is no longer measured by your separateness, but by your sameness, what becomes of pride? What becomes of dominion? What becomes of control? Spinoza doesn't leave us in despair. Instead, he offers something rare: dignity without dominance, worth without superiority. In his world, the divine doesn't play favorites. You are no more God than the river, but you are not less either. And that realization, it doesn't shrink you, it expands you. Because once you stop seeing yourself as the main character, you start to see the whole story, the interconnectedness, the sacred flow, the total unity of being. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, even breathe differently, not as a master of the world, but as someone who knows they are the world, made visible. And in that shift, the ego dies. But the soul finally wakes up. If everything is God, every thought, every atom, every flicker of light, then morality isn't handed down from a mountaintop. It's not written in stone tablets. It's written in the logic of nature itself. Spinoza's ethics begin where most religions end, not with commandments but with understanding. He doesn't tell you what to do. He tells you to see, to observe, to comprehend the laws that govern everything from the orbit of planets to the pull of your own desires. Because in Spinoza's universe, goodness isn't a divine decree. It's alignment, harmony, coherence with the infinite system you're a part of. So the question becomes, what kind of life flows in harmony with the divine nature of things? To answer that, Spinoza doesn't point to sacred rituals or religious obedience. He points to reason, to the mind's capacity to observe without illusion, to feel without being ruled by feeling, to live, not as a reaction, but as a revelation. This is why Spinoza's ethics are often compared to Stoicism. Both philosophies see freedom not in the ability to do whatever you want, but in mastering your inner world. For Spinoza, freedom is understanding the necessity of things and choosing to live in peace with that necessity. It's not about suppressing emotions. It's about investigating them. Why do I feel anger? What triggered this fear? What is this desire pulling me toward? Because the more you understand your emotions, the less power they have over you. And the less power they have, the more space you have to act, not from compulsion, but from clarity. The person who lives this way, Spinoza says, is the truly free person, not because they dominate others, but because they are no longer dominated by themselves. In this ethics of unity, morality is not imposed. It's discovered. It rises from within, like a seed cracking open in sunlight, because it finally understands what it's made of, and what it's made of is divine. And now we arrive at the most paradoxical and perhaps most uncomfortable truth in Spinoza's philosophy. There is no such thing as free will. Not in the way we like to think of it. Not in the Hollywood, hero choosing their destiny sense. To Spinoza, the universe is a web of cause and effect so vast, so intricate, so perfect, that everything, yes, everything happens out of necessity. Your thoughts, your feelings, your so-called choices, they are not accidents. They are expressions of the infinite whole moving through you, just as surely as gravity pulls or light travels. Your life was not written by you. The cosmos writes itself on the page you are. That may sound frightening, or gloomy, or perhaps pointless. However, Spinoza saw it as the gateway to freedom. Because you stop fighting the current of reality when you realize that you are not alone, isolated, or doomed to wander. You begin to learn to swim with the tide instead of battling it, and something incredible occurs in that comprehension. You become free within necessity. You begin to act not from fear or habit or impulse, but from insight, from alignment with the nature of things. This is not a resignation, it's realization, not powerlessness, but peace. And the one who sees this clearly, Spinoza calls them the wise, not because they are cold or detached, but because they are awake. They don't deny emotion. They feel deeply, but they are not consumed. They don't control everything, but they understand enough to move with grace. In Spinoza's eyes, the wise are serene, joyful, not because life is easy, but because they see clearly, and what they see is this: the world is as it must be. You are as you must be, and the divine is not above you or beyond you. It is you. So what now? Maybe you leave this video and forget everything, or maybe, just maybe, this idea stays with you. Not as dogma, not as belief, but as a quiet, persistent echo. You are not a fragment, you are not broken, you are not waiting to be chosen. You are God, remembering itself.